Hey, Patrick.
Hey Tim, how
Um,
you doing?
I'm good. And how are you? That's the first, as a director, I'm going to check in with you. How are you and Nikki and the girls?
We're doing good. I think like everybody, there's days of um, grief, but there's also a lot of silver lining and positive. My wife Nikki's very good at making sure that as a family we are thinking about gratitude, and she's doing a killer job with the girls. I mean, it's a lot to kind of homeschool them, and luckily, we're just we're fortunate that
Mhm.
as she's a personal trainer, so she can be home a lot of the day working with them on their school stuff. So um, we're lucky, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are hurting and that can't do that and are trying to figure out childcare and stuff like that. So we think about them a lot, but we're doing well.
And I've tried to do a couple of her workouts. I am not the most fit person in the world, but it gives me something to do. And I love what she's doing on her Gratitude Fridays.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called, if I'm not mistaken. I love that she's putting that out there
Mhm.
uh, on Fridays, which is a good thing. Um, Lauren asked me to do this. I just thought, you know, full disclosure, you and I are very good friends. And I was trying to think of how to introduce people to the Patrick that I know.
Mhm.
They know you as the artistic director of Royal Theater, but I don't even know if they know about your past, how you got started, that you started out when you were in school doing football and being the athlete, and then something happened and you got turned on to theater. Can you tell some of the viewers about how that got started?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. So like you said, I was a football player, and um, something that I thought that I was going to be with my life. I mean, being a kid in middle school, I my biggest dream was to be a football coach. Those were really positive mentors in my life, and I thought, it'd be really exciting to be a football coach, and so that's what I thought I was going to do. So I played offensive guard and defensive tackle. I wasn't very good at it. I always knew that I'd probably be a better coach than a player, but I had a really good time. And then I think I was in eighth grade, and my brother was in he started doing theater, um, and so I would go see that, and then he did this show, Moliere's Doctor in Spite of Himself, which was I guess that was my ninth grade year. I think it was his senior year of high school, and he was so good. And I just kind of sat in that auditorium starstruck by him, and then just kind of the whole event. Like, it was so funny, and to kind of sit in a room with people laughing like that together, and like
Mm-hmm.
the immediate kind of community. At the time, I wouldn't have defined it that way. I was just like, oh man, it's like we all had a great time. But there was something electric about it. I think we didn't have a lot of theater where I grew up in West Texas, so it was just a moment where, like, that was, we all have those, and those of us who are in the theater can probably point to these moments where we had, you know it was kind of our entry into theater, and like just something electric happens in your body and in your soul. And it was definitely seeing my brother play the lead role in that show. And so I kept playing football. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
stop immediately, and then went to high school, and started taking some drama classes on the side. And I had two really big interests that started happening. So my junior year, I stopped playing football and joined the production team at school, which was like
Mm-hmm.
West Texas. Like, I was like breaking religion to do
Especially in
that.
Odessa,
Yeah,
where I know you were, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, Friday Night Lights is sort of based on Odessa, Texas. Am I right in
yeah.
saying
So
that?
Friday
And
Night
I know
Lights
it's
was,
a big football town.
yeah, yeah. Friday Night Lights was a book first. It was a sociology book, documenting kind of how religious really football is in Odessa. And so it started as the book, then the movie, and then the TV series. So yeah, that's my hometown. It was like, I mean, it really was like, and it was like, I love football to this day, because of it. But yeah, so yeah, quitting to join the drama team was pretty. It was heretical. Uh, but I also really found in high school that I loved chemistry, but I just kept getting pulled back to the theater. And then I started college this is a little more than you asked for, but
No, you're going down the road I'm going, so
yeah.
you could go right ahead.
I started college as a pharmacy major.
I
So
didn't know that.
yeah, that's what I wanted to do, is I wanted to be a pharmacist. And so I, I was like, I'll do pharmacy. And then for my electives, I'll take some theater classes. And then I just couldn't stop being attracted to the theater classes. And then I just switched. I turned my major into theater. And, it's funny because I still look at scripts like a chemist, I think. I think people ask me a lot why I don't act. And I think it's because I'm not a very good actor, because my brain does too many things. Like, actors have to be really smart, but they have to also be able to focus really well and to live into relationship. And I don't know that I'm as smart as actors are, but I also can't stop thinking of everything around the words, the playwright, the scenography, all that stuff. Because for me, scripts are like worksheets. They're like indicators of elements that you put together to create something like a chemist might. And so I think that doesn't serve if you're not able to turn that part of your brain off, it doesn't serve you very well as a performer. So I think it serves me better as a director.
And that's one of the reasons you're such a good director, I think, is because the way that you look and, I say, devour a script and are able to analyze and see things. I think that's what makes a good director. And I know I'm much older than you are, but I have learned a lot just by sitting in the same room and watching you work. So that's interesting about the chemistry. That's something I didn't know. But I know you went to college in Texas at Texas State, and if all my research is correct, then you went to DC, or did you get your master's before you went to DC?
Yeah, I got my master's first.
At
yep.
Mississippi, at Southern Mississippi.
Southern Mississippi, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I don't think a lot of people realize, and unless they know you, is that when you started out, it's about your youth education, that you did a lot with the youth, that especially up in Washington, and started the after-school playwriting program. Those of them, those of the people who don't know about it, can you tell them about that? Because I know it was nationally recognized with the Humanities Youth Arts Program, and that was given, am I right by saying it was given by First Lady Michelle Obama?
Yeah, that's right. So I guess when I was in graduate school, because theater was like where I grew up, and there wasn't a lot of it. There was no like career path that I knew of. I didn't have a mentor that I had seen go through the process or anything like that. And so when I was leaving undergrad, my directing teacher there, Dr. Sodders, said, there's this really great program at Southern Miss, and they're looking for really good directors, and I recommended you. And I thought, well, I'll go do that. I mean, grad school seems like a good idea. It seemed like a really good next step. And so then I got to Southern Mississippi, and I had a great directing mentor there named Frank Kuhn. And he challenged us in a lot of ways, I remember the first time we sat down in a kind of a director symposium with him, which the graduate directors kind of met with him weekly just to talk. And the first question he asked us was, why theater? And he gave us an article about how you shouldn't get your MFA in theater. And we were like, we just came to this school, like we're a week in, and you're giving us like this article. And it was just his way of challenging us and saying, like, if you don't know why you're doing this, then you shouldn't do it, And so we spent a semester really wrestling with that question of why theater. And I was doing a research project on this group that I had heard about that was in Honduras, Mexico, the Forge Theater. And what they would do is that they would go village to village, because the Honduran government was passing all these really oppressive laws, and people were voting on them, but like a significant portion of the country couldn't read. So they didn't know what they were voting on. So they had just believed what they were told by the politicians, but then what was written down was actually very different. And so what they would do is they'd spend a week in every village, and they would like teach people to read. They would have all these literacy programs. And then they would, at nighttime, they would do Shakespearean plays but they would set them in Honduras. And so like, it was just a way to continue like literacy and learning. And in that, which fascinating theater group. And so in that process of researching them, I read that they based a lot of their practices on Augusto Boal's Theater of the Oppressed, and I didn't know what that was. So I went to the library and checked out the Theater of the Oppressed and started reading it. And I didn't put it down. So I read it from cover to cover that first night. I just kind of stayed up all night, and I was like, well, this is what I think theater should be. This notion of this give and take, that audiences shouldn't be passive and all that stuff, but I still didn't know what to do with that energy. And so I knew that I needed to do something after grad school. I knew I needed to make some money. I also knew that I wanted to continue my craft. And so the internship at the Shakespeare Theater Company came up. And so it was a casting and directing fellowship. And I was fortunate enough to get that, which was really exciting. It didn't pay, except they reimbursed you for living expenses, which was great. So you get to live in DC and work with all these amazing directors. And kind of my life just kind of started following these two tracks. One was freelance directing and like learning from some amazing directors, and then also at the same time working in the education department at the Shakespeare Theater. So they asked me to come down and do some guest lecturing with them. Sorry, this is a long way to answer your question.
No, you're going down my outline, so you're making my job much easier. So
I'm sorry, I didn't see to talk too much. But anyway, so what happened was they invited me down. There was a program called the Southeast Project, and it was is the southeast quadrant of DC. That's where that's where I was living and where the Shakespeare Theater Company's administrative offices were located, and the most economically depressed side of the city at the time. And so we worked with inner city kids after school, teaching them Shakespeare. And I had some of the most incredible experiences of my life doing that. I worked with great teachers, people that are still my friends today, mentors. But there's a kid who was amazing. He was like this great kid. And he had a stutter, and it was really severe. Like he couldn't, communication with him was pretty difficult. But when he got on stage and performed Shakespeare, I think the first thing he did was The Tempest. He never stuttered. You know what I mean? Like the rhythm of it and the way that it was just like this amazing moment. Like I just learned so much courage from him, and that was really exciting. And then from there, I just kind of started going like, well, this is a way that when you think about like the theater of the oppressed, like education is like a way to use theater to like impact people's lives. So from there, I was invited to become, at the time, just kind of the resident teacher at, the program director at Young Playwrights Theater. Young Playwrights Theater was started by playwright Karen Zacharias. When I went there, it was just me and one other person, two other people, the executive director and an office manager. There's only three of us. And that was teaching inner city kids to write plays in order to teach an agency. So that, help with decision making. And then I created an after school theater program there, of course, with the help of many, many people. I can't take sole credit for that. And that program won the award for Michelle Obama. So it's pretty exciting. So I found that theater education was my way into kind of doing what the Forge Theater was doing. That was always really exciting.
I think it's amazing the path that you have taken, because I'm a true believer in fate, that everything happens to us for a reason, the way it's supposed to. But knowing you and learning, knowing how you love theater and how you love the teaching aspect, that I didn't know a lot about I know when you were back down in Texas, I'm jumping ahead, that you were part of the youth, theater group down there. But I think that in itself helps transform what we see the Patrick Torres here at Raleigh Little Theater now. But continue on about what happened with the program, and then you going back to Texas and start working with that youth program down there.
Yeah, great. So part of what we started to do at Young Playwrights Theater is we got the school programs working really well, I think. and just kind of having a lot of fun with those students. And we started to get opportunities and kind of identify opportunities as a staff, to really start creating some original pieces with different community groups. Because one of the things that David Snyder, who was a really good friend of mine, and he was my boss at Young Playwrights Theater, he was very innovative, and he challenged us to be. And so we started putting way more student work out in the public. And so it was important for us to make sure that the work that was happening in the classroom, we would hire actors, professional actors would come in and they'd read those plays, and students would get to see their plays acted out by some of the best actors in DC. It was always really exciting. And that kind of momentum, we started to identify different groups of people that we could write plays with that might be really meaningful to the company. And so I led a program, David and I together led a program where we went into the juvenile jail in the juvenile justice system and created an original work with them that we then put on our tour that went to multiple schools all over the city. So other students, other young people got to see a play that was written by people who were incarcerated, young people who were incarcerated, and that was really exciting. And then I got to lead the development process anyway of a play that was written by women living in halfway house who had experienced homelessness. And so that was always that was really exciting, and we used Augusto Boal's technique for that one, where what we created, what those women created, was all these this scenario where the premise of the play was you were coming to a town hall meeting to vote on whether or not to move a halfway house into your neighborhood. And so they helped us with real original dialogue for the people advocating for and fighting for the opportunity to have a halfway house. And they also helped us with the opposing viewpoint, because they had experienced it about if they move into this neighborhood, what's it going to do to the neighborhood? And it was so palpable. It was really exciting. So working with those communities of people to create a play was just so gratifying. And then
so you've done I'm sorry, you've done a lot when it comes to social justice aspect when it comes to theater. That was something else that I knew about the youth programs, but I didn't realize how in depth it dealt with the social issues and social justice issues that face people down there. That's pretty impressive.
Well, it was all the folks that I worked with. I mean, I've just one of the things that I think I'm the most grateful for when it comes to work in the theater is that theater introduces you to, I think, the most incredible people, whether they're performers or writers or people in the community who care about the work that you're doing. Charles and I, we would say all the time, man, look at what we decided to program this play and look at who it introduced us to. Right. And then who we get to introduce to the community that maybe doesn't know who they are. And so I just I love that theater brings people together. I mean, that's probably the hardest thing about the time we're in right now, is just missing that unity and the kind of being in a room with incredible people. But yeah, so then Creative Action, at the time it was called Theater Action Project. They were located in Austin. And we had just had our first child, and that's where my family was. And so, and also my grandmother was, she had Alzheimer's. So I just had a desire to get back home to kind of see her some more before she passed. And I was really thankful I got to do that. But Theater Action Project was a theater it was founded on these social justice ideas. And I thought, well, that's really cool. Again, going back to grad school in the Forge Theater and really getting excited about the idea of how do you help a community using the arts. And so Theater Action Project brought me on to be the middle and high school program director, but my primary focus there was working in the juvenile justice system in Texas, in Travis County, where Austin is, to create original theater work with those students. Again, when you're doing that work, it's not about the product always. Sometimes it is. but it's about the journey, because sitting in a room full of kids that are incarcerated for whatever reason, and talking about theater and like having them build a play together, and you get to talk about agency and how characters have the power to make their own decision and all that kind of stuff. You're just reinforcing some, you know, some good positive behavior, or you're encouraging them to think about how their choices affect other people. Because that's what happens in plays. Like, this choice makes all these things happen, and that can be for good or for bad. And so that was really kind of the point of all that work. And man, I had a really, it's hard work. That's really hard work, but it was good, and I'm really grateful for it.
I'm sure out of that there is that work with you and the team that put together. I'm sure you changed a lot of people's lives and helped them make better choices and better decisions to get their life back on track.
Well, I hope so. You know, I was working with the primary recidivism counselor, and so she was, you know, helping us look at like what impact, if any, we were having on, like, you know, kids that were coming back into the system. And that's, you know, it's tricky. There's a lot of pressures. You know, it's idealistic to believe theater is gonna make them change their path, but it has many times. And so, you know, I don't know. And that's part of the tricky thing about working with that population is, hey, you there's only so much information you can have about them. So like, once they got out, we didn't have any contact with them. So, you know, it was pretty, but you hope that you planted a seed somewhere. And then also, while I was in Austin, I got a chance to work with local LGBT group that was serving teenagers, and we created a devised ensemble with them as well. So, you know, lots of really fun, lots of good things happening. And then I moved here.
Well, I love the fact that I'm looking at my outline here beside me, and you're going down the whole path. You're making this very easy for me, so I appreciate that. Actually, you're at the point that about coming to Raleigh, and some people may not know, I was on the search committee for the artistic job after Haskell passed away, and I have told you, and I don't mind telling people, when you walked out of the room and Charles was at the head of the table and he was asking everybody, you know, their thoughts, the thing I said to him, I said, run to the theater and hire him right now. There was something about you, as I don't even know if you realize it, you draw people, you draw people to you. You have that energy, at least to me, that you bring people to you, even though you're in a place of authority. And I think that's a gift. I knew that you were passionate about theater, and I knew you were the right person. And I think, before I get off track, the one thing I will say is you came to Raleigh Little Theater at the right time. You're the right person to be there, even though I knew it was whoever took the role, having to follow in Haskell's footsteps after 30 years, it was going to be hard for anybody. But having you come to Raleigh Little Theater, was it a hard decision for you to make, to leave that program and take this opportunity and jump? Because I know it had to be a huge jump for you and your family to leave your family down in Texas and come here.
Yeah, it was insanely hard. You know, we were, you know, I applied when I did my last interview. Nikki was pregnant with our second child, Story, and you know, it's just crazy to think about like moving across the country when you know you're going to have a newborn. So there was that. There was the students and the work that I was doing with Creative Action. There was the staff of Creative Action. Theater Action Project turned into Creative Action because we wanted to kind of expand. Because that what was so cool about, just for a second, just a little tangent. What was so cool about working at, we started as Theater Action Project, but immediately when I got there, the coolest thing in the world was every day when I walked into work, there were puppeteers, there were parade artists, there were you know, visual artists, mural painting, like it was every kind of art you could imagine, all for the purpose of trying to help young people develop really positive life skills. It was an amazing place. So that staff too, it was really hard to leave that staff, just because they were all amazing people. But I had always wanted to be an artistic director because, like I was saying, my life was moving in two parallel tracks. So even while I was doing all of that theater education work, I was freelancing at night. So I was directing as much as I could in DC, and really trying in Austin. I wasn't in Austin for super long, so it was kind of a little bit harder to break in there. But I was doing both all the time, and so I was like, what would be great is to like have a job where I was able to marry these two paths and just see what could happen. Because what I didn't know was, and what I don't even know that I've cracked yet, except that I keep trying, is how do you create socially relevant and meaningful theater in a scenario where the audience is large, has to be passive? How do you continue the dialogue, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you maybe not totally disrupt the traditional experience of viewing a play like Auguste Boal was doing, but also still make it meaningful and engaging for audiences? And I think that that's just fun. And I don't know that I'll ever figure it out, but it's what keeps me motivated and what keeps me coming to work, is like how to do that. And the thing that was super appealing about Raleigh Little Theater too was part of what they wanted in the new artistic director was someone who cared about education and had some skill in that area. And so it just seemed like such a good fit, and what was funny is like, I knew Charles, because Charles, for people that know, also worked at the Shakespeare Theater. I think we figured out when we were working together that our paths maybe overlapped by like a year or like 8 months. And we were just in completely different departments. And so I never really knew Charles that well. We would be at the same social gatherings, of course, and the first rehearsals and some, parties and things like that in town. And so I always thought he was really cool. I thought he was way cooler than me. And he definitely is. But so I didn't know him super well, but I knew him well enough to know that I really liked him. And I had known when I was in Austin that he had moved down here to take over the theater. And so I hadn't kept up with Raleigh Little Theater, but I'd visited the website when Charles moved here just to kind of see where he was headed. And one day I was sitting in my office at Creative Action. I was not looking for a job. Like, I was happy there. Of course, my family's there. I'm a Texan. For people that don't know me, you got to know, like, I'm a Texan through and through.
Yes, you are.
So Charles just Facebook, I guess he probably just Facebooked all of his friends at the time and said, hey, will you do me a favor and will you like Raleigh Little Theater's Facebook page? And I was like, oh yeah. And so I clicked over. I was like, oh, and I want to see what they're up to. So I clicked on the website just to kind of look at what Charles was up to and see the season. And I see that there's an announcement for artistic director job. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I emailed my wife, should I do that? You know what I mean? And she was like, sure, because that's Nikki. She's always up for an adventure. And so I did. And so I applied, not looking for a job, definitely like being scared of what it would mean to move across the country away from my family and all that. But just the job description and the more that I learned about the community, I just, I had to throw my hat in. Yep. So it just came from liking a Facebook page.
As I said, fate, it was meant to be. I'm a true believer in that. So we're at the point that when you came to Raleigh Little Theater, one of my questions is, what do you think was some of the biggest obstacles that you had to overcome when you first got to Raleigh Little Theater here in the Triangle? I know moving your family here definitely was with a newborn. I think all of y'all just packed up in your big old truck and came down. But what do you think coming in as a new artistic director was some of the biggest obstacles that you had to overcome coming into a new theater in a new area?
Yeah, well, I think you got to get on a really fast learning curve. And so that, and you know, it was a job I'd never done before. You know,
Mm.
I hadn't been an artistic director before, and so just kind of learning how all of that worked. And you know, it's funny because I don't know that I would say I don't know what I would say that there were major obstacles, because I
Mm-hmm.
think I had so many people. Here's the great thing about Raleigh Little Theater is there are so many volunteers here and so many amazing people who are going to knock down those walls with you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And like I think about Bunny Saffron, who was the stage manager of Hairspray, which is the first show that I walked in on,
Mm-hmm.
and just her willingness to like invite me into rehearsal, have me there to be with the group. Like, you know, just like there's so many people here that knock down the walls with you,
Yep.
if not for you. I mean, you did that for me, helping me kind of get to know people in town, because it's a very fast learning curve. Like,
It is.
and so that was I guess that was hard, but I mean I think you already named the biggest one, but I don't want to call it an obstacle,
Mm-hmm.
because it really was. It's something that I think is something to cherish about this place, and that's like Haskell's legacy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think Rod Rich, he was one of the people that interviewed me on my final interview here, right before I met you. That final part. But Charles had convened a group of directors who had directed in prior seasons for me to meet before I met y'all as the search committee. And Rod Rich, he has said to me since, he was like, you walked in that room and we all thought, oh, this might be the person we're throwing to the wolves, just because he was aware that like whoever, it doesn't even matter if the person you're taking over for is beloved. If someone has been in a place for 30 years, that is a big shadow to live under. And then
It is.
Haskell, on top of being here for 30 years, was also beloved by this community, and rightly so, rightly so. And so just kind of living in that shadow, I mean, for the first couple years, you know, it was, you could see like it's this interesting feeling, like for the volunteers who really knew him, you can see them seeing him kind of standing next to me as they're talking to me, you know. But there's something beautiful about that too. And I think, I don't think, I didn't really meet anyone who was extra pressure on me to be Haskell.
Good.
But I did feel an incredible sense of duty to kind of live up to everything that he had built. You know, and just as a human being, I believe that we have to be inspired and lean on the people that came before us. So I've always been okay with that. I mean, you know, I have people all the time, you know, you know, there are jokes about like, you know, he in our annual production of Cinderella, it's still his portrait above the fireplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, he looks down on me every Christmas. You know what I mean? But I think that's
Having been,
okay. You know?
I'm sorry, having been somebody who worked with Haskell for 5 years, you know, he was the one, he and Sean Smith gave me my first opportunity to get back in theater here in the Triangle. I can say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, Haskell would definitely be very proud of what you have brought to that role. I think definitely stepping into that would be very hard on whoever had to come into it. But I honestly believe, like you said, it's funny, I didn't make the analogy of him standing beside you, but I definitely think he definitely will be very, very proud of what you've done and what you have accomplished in your time there.
Well, that means a ton to me, you know, like it really does, because you know, it's important to me that we kind of honor our total tradition as a theater. And doesn't mean that I don't think that we should do new things and try new things, but just always honoring who came before us. And, you know, I count it as a gift. But I do think, you know, it is hard to follow in someone's footsteps who did so much for so long.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to the next question. What do you feel has been your most rewarding experience since you've been at Raleigh Theater? And I'm not I mean, it can be a production or just overall the experience. I know how you feel about the volunteers and all the people who work there, and I know that's a big part of the rewarding experience is having all that support. But is there other things that you know, you would say has been really rewarding for you and for your family?
Mm. Yeah, that'd be, it'd be interesting to know what the family would say. um, uh, uh, I think it's just like, for me, it's every year when we get to the Canty Awards and people like get up that are given either whether they've won a performance award or they're given one of the volunteer awards. When they talk about family and they talk about home, and just like what Raleigh Little Theater means to them. I love hearing stories about people growing up here. I think that those are the moments that are the most meaningful, that make me feel like we're doing something right. So it's a little bit like, I mean, yes, I'm proud of so many productions, so many, but I think the most meaningful moments are the moments where we hear the people that engage with us talk about what this place means to them. That's so, and it happens at Divas as well. When the Divas really feel motivated to say just what the theater means to them. I think that kind of stuff is super exciting. And I think if it's about, like, I have a hard time talking about me, but I will say also at the Canty Awards, something last year that was very, very meaningful to me was Gus Allen won an award and said something about how the art at Raleigh Little Theater has always been important, but with me, the heart is important as well. And that was very meaningful to me.
Having sat in several audiences, I've been in every audience at the Canty Award that you've been there. I know of 3 different speeches that you've given that the audience absolutely, because Patrick, you speak from the heart. And one thing that I know that you bring to that role as artistic director at Raleigh Little Theater is your heart. You put your heart and your soul into your job. And, you know, some people go into their jobs and they look at it as work and they go home and don't have to worry about it. As a fellow person who runs a theater, we can't do that. I mean, because we care. And the speeches that you have given at the Canty Awards, I've heard people talk about them to this day, because you definitely bring the heart to the theater. I mean, even though you came in at a trying time, I think that what you have brought has definitely been a heart and a soul to the theater. You know, the combination of what you and Charles, along with the volunteers, have done to keep Raleigh Theater alive and the legacy there. And like I said, those speeches that you give at the Canty Awards are so heartfelt that, I mean, I've been moved to tears, and I know other people have too. And you always hear that thunderous applause, and it's very heartfelt. So I think that's some of the most rewarding things I've seen you do.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that you just put a lot of pressure on the Cantys this year for me.
Well, you never fail. You never fail to live up on that. I'm not going to put you on the spot, even though I was told.
Every time somebody starts a sentence that way, I don't.
I'm not going to ask you, because being a director, I know each production is like a child. I always say it's like giving birth, and women, please don't get upset. I've never given birth. I know that it's just a comparison. To when you do productions, but can you tell us some of the standout moments? Because I know you probably know my favorite production you've ever done at Raleigh Little Theater. It's going to take something very tremendous to overcome Memphis for me. I mean, you've done some beautiful work, but Memphis was something magical to me, having sat in that audience 8 times and would have been there every night if I could have. But of all the productions that you've done, tell us some of the standout things that you think that you have brought as to different productions, and some of the outstanding things that you've seen, or some special moments.
Man, I guess for me, like they're all special. You're right. It's like sometimes people, say, "What's your favorite show you've ever done?" And I always kind of like in a joking way, say the last one that I did. You know what I mean? Because like, it's just like every time you as a director, you're working so hard to make something that you hope will be great and engaging. And, you know, here, it's as important to me that that the volunteers feel proud of what they're doing. If somebody's going to volunteer their time to be here, all these hours, you want them to feel really proud of the work that's produced. And so that's kind of my biggest hope. And so when I think about like the stuff that there's a spotlight on, for me, it's like it's experiential. So like I think about, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is Glass Menagerie. And the reason why is, people don't know this part, is my brother was also a director, and he passed away during rehearsals for that show in a car accident in Austin. And he, you know, you heard kind of my story at the beginning, is like I am a theater artist because of him, from being starstruck by him. And he was an incredible director. And I would call him after every rehearsal most of the time and be like, here's what I'm wrestling with, I don't know, or like, I'm total crap. And he would say, no, you're not. And like and then he would call me after his rehearsals and we would go through the same thing. And so there was the ending of, you know, like for me, even before he passed, like I wanted that play to focus on the relationship between Tom and Laura, as siblings. And because I think that that's really what the play's about. Like, I think because it's a memory play, Tom, he remembers, and Jesse Gephardt, who played Tom, was so good at like just, and that whole cast really was so great at living into this moment, or this idea that if you are remembering your mother, then you are going to remember her in the way you want to remember her, not what was actual reality. So the play was a lot. There was a lot of criticism about the play that it was too funny, but that was okay with me because it was like Tom's memory of how outlandish his mother was. But I was really like, the ending of the play, like I, you know, had this, the set was all these frames, and I really was doubtful. Like I wanted this frame to drop in front of Laura at the end. I wanted the audience to connect that meant that Tom has now put her in memory, and now she is gone.
I thought that moment was very powerful.
Thank you. And I remember calling my brother and just being like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know if this is going to read. I don't know if it's going to translate. And you know, it's like, I just don't know if it's a good idea. And he was like, yes, absolutely, it's a good idea. And so then he passed, and I was like, well, I'm not changing it now.
Exactly.
And so I'm really proud of that moment. And that whole cast was so great. And you know, Ryan and Jesse and Kelly and Mary, they were so kind, helping me through that really difficult time. And then Memphis came after that. I think I'm also really proud of, I think something else that was really meaningful was just this year with A Curious Incident, you know, having Michael be on stage and having a young person with autism kind of lead a cast and lead a show, was really amazing. He was a gift. I'm really proud of that show, and I'm proud of his work, and he made me a better director for sure. You know, it's hard to say because there's so many like moments where like I met somebody amazing, or somebody did something that they didn't believe they could do. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I could
understand.
like I keep looking over here because all of my show posters are over here, and like every bit of it, like watching Rose Higgins, you know, play Mrs. Lovett, and with David Henderson as Sweeney every night. Like, you know, what a gift. And there's just performances throughout all of them that make me so excited and so happy. And yeah, you know, and my first show in the Gaddy was Whipping Man. And that, you know, I'm real proud of that show. That was my first time too, working with Miyuki Miyuki Sue as a scene designer, and she really transformed the Gaddy. I think
Unbelievable.
showed audiences what we could do in that space. And so I'm really proud of that as well. But it's really hard to look up here and not think of every moment.
I guess it wasn't fair to say your most outstanding ones, but what I wanted to do in that question is for you to do exactly what you did, is talk about different special moments in shows, whether they're, it's not like you're picking favorite children, it's just that you're talking about special moments with your children, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's what's really funny about Whipping Man too is like, there was that really graphic description in the beginning of the leg amputation leading up to the leg amputation. And we had Elaine Patron would be able to tell you exactly how many times, but
I was there one night. I was there when it had to stop.
We had to stop the show several times because people got sick, which is that was not my goal. But what's really funny is I told my mama about that. My mom and my stepdad just moved here to Raleigh, which is amazing. I'm glad they're here. But when I told my mom, because she saw it opening, and then I called her, I was like, Mom, like a couple people have passed out. Like we had to stop the show. And she was like, oh my gosh, that's awful. But also like, that means it's really good, right?
It's true. I was there when they had to call the ambulance to a patron one night.
That's awful. I feel bad about that, but it's a funny story now.
It's funny now, but it also speaks to the talent of somebody like Philip. I mean,
yes,
Philip,
yeah.
the whole cast, Philip, Ryan,
Chris,
yeah, all of them were fantastic. But for an actor to be able to do that and take you in there, that it's so real, it's just, those are the moments that I think we as directors live for. So yes, it's awful and it's funny now, and it's also wonderful that you're able to pull that performance to do that to people.
Lauren just wrote that Chris, that was in the Whipping Man, said he thinks it happened 3 times. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for fact checking us,
Chris. But before we wrap up, the one thing I want to do is just for fun, so people can get to know you. All the serious stuff out of the way. What's your favorite color?
Oh, green.
Green.
Yes, I love green.
Okay, and what's your favorite drink of choice?
Oh my gosh, it depends on the moment. I think Nikki and I, my wife Nikki and I, love to have bourbon and Coke. And we know that people who love bourbon make fun of us for putting Coke with it, but it's like comfort for us. So when we've had a particular stressful day, we like to sit down and have that together.
Yeah, cool. I have bourbon and Coke. I'm not like David Wilk to just have bourbon. I just don't think I could do it. What's your favorite guilty food? Not healthy food, but guilty food.
Oh my gosh, everything. Man, I would say, I love pizza. That's probably my favorite, but in terms of like genre, would be Mexican food. All Mexican food, I love it.
I'm that way about Chinese. I'm addicted to Chinese food. What's your favorite place to relax? Favorite thing to do just to get away from the theater and just to relax?
Yeah. So I play a little bit of guitar, not very well. But I love it. And so when I just kind of need to escape for a minute, like I just pick up the guitar and play around on it. And, my kiddos, Karis and Story, and then of course, Nikki, they're so good about just kind of letting me be in a corner of a room and doing that. And they just kind of keep operating around me. So that's really nice. It's a really good way to relax.
Good. What's your favorite musical? Not that you've directed or anything, but just your favorite musical. And then your favorite play.
Whew, Tim, that is hard.
Okay, give me 3.
All right. I maybe because my brother and I used to watch it all the time when we were kids. I'm just gonna. Little Shop is in there somewhere. I was so glad I got to do that a couple years ago, but that one just feels like childhood to me. My parents worked very hard, and so my brother and I spent a lot of times at home together after school, like waiting for them to get off work, and we watched Little Shop a ton. I'll tell you one that I'm sad about that I just feel like I love Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I love it so much. I think the music is so good.
It is.
I actually saw Jesse and David talk about this show the other night, but like, and I've looked at it a few times here, and I'm just like, you can't do that show. It's not funny anymore.
No.
I mean, we have a serious problem in this world with human trafficking, and so it's not funny. And I just think it'd be irresponsible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there are many people who disagree with me, and that's fine. But I love that music, and the dancing in it is so good.
That is a show you have to have dancers for. That's for
You
sure.
definitely have to have dancers. And then I got to tell you, man, I fell in love. Sondheim always scared the crap out of me. It's like Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like a lot of things that scare the crap out of me, I always pretend that I don't like them at all, because I don't want to admit that I think that they're bigger than who I am as a human being. And they are. I mean, directing Shakespeare for the first time was insanely humbling. And directing Sweeney was super humbling, but I really fell in love with that show.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so smart, and he and that team that put it together are so smart. The way that the music kind of indicates the plot and all the characters,
Mm-hmm.
and the motifs that come in and out and that you hear over and over. I mean, it's just humbling to kind of sit with that. So I'd throw that one in there as 3. My favorite play, that's hard. I'll talk about experiences again.
Okay.
Maybe Death of a Salesman's the first show I ever saw on Broadway. I was by myself, and it was Brian Dennehy was in it, and Elizabeth Franz. And I left the theater that night, and it was snowing outside, and it was just magic. And that show, and that production was magic. Robert Falls directed that show, and the way that he did it, it just kind of seared it into my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that one. There's a play called, oh my gosh, what was it called? Oh, De la Guardia Via Via, which was an off-Broadway show in New York that took place in a bank. And the whole place, the actors were on harnesses and would fly through the air and pick audience members up and fly them in the air. And,
Okay.
It was an incredible experience. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. And then something that was meaningful to both me and Nikki, just because of who we are, we saw a production in DC of The Last Days of Judas Iscariot that wrecked us. I mean, we were bawling and bawling and bawling after that show, and just talking about faith and who we are and belief systems, and like it just wrecked us. It wrecked us. There was a talk back after the show that day, and we couldn't even stay because we just had to get away. And then a fourth one is Sleep No More. Nikki and I saw that in Boston before it moved to New York, and that experience is just something remarkable. So
it's on my list to do.
Yeah. So those would probably be mine.
Mm-hmm. When Raleigh Ensemble Players and David Henderson was a part, who just said that you play a mean guitar and have written some really good songs, great songs. David and Ryan Brock and Lamariff, there was so many people in the production with Raleigh Ensemble Players did Judas Iscariot, and it was only on for one weekend because I don't know if it was hurricane or what, but there was something that happened, and that was a very, very powerful, meaningful play. I just think I'm like you. I love that play. Before Lauren pops back on, with all of this talk about Raleigh Little Theater, of course, being one of the oldest in the United States and the legacy, I hope you realize that you're adding to the legacy of Raleigh Little Theater, that no matter what the future brings, we don't know, but you definitely have made your mark and will continue to make your mark there and be a part of the Raleigh Little Theater legacy. And one of the things that I'm thankful for is that you're here and you're my friend.
No, man, I'm thankful for you too. And I'm thankful to be here. And I just say, like, I appreciate you saying that. And I hope that we continue to do things that people are proud of. And I can't leave that without saying every single actor that I've gotten to work with, every single volunteer who's built the set, sewed a costume, that they're part of any legacy that I'm leaving around. It is certainly not me. I'm not doing it alone. I appreciate everyone.
There's Lauren.
Hey guys.
Hey, Lauren.
I love this conversation. I love all these conversations, but I love it when friends can talk to each other because you guys know each other in a different way than I know you, and then some people in the community know you. So I really appreciate both of you for doing this. And
Well, thank you for letting us. I was really nervous about this because of knowing Patrick, but you made it very easy, and I'm glad.
Well, it's because when somebody invites me to talk, I don't stop talking. So
that's usually me.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for doing all the research and for hosting it. And Lauren, thank you for continuing to give the theaters a voice in town. It's been fun watching all this content that you're producing.
Well, we will keep on doing it as long as we can. Tim, you'll be in the hot seat on Monday. Jesse
on Monday
going to be interviewing you, and you may or may not have some big announcement to make.
I will go ahead and say it. There's a huge announcement coming on Monday, so please join us. And Jesse, I love Jesse to death, so Jesse, be kind if you're watching, please.
And please, guys, if you're watching, I mean, the whole point of these videos is to keep our theater community and our local theaters in the public eye so that we don't forget you guys during this time. And I hope if people can donate, that they will consider donating to North Raleigh Arts and Creative Theater, to Raleigh Little Theater, to the NC Artist Relief Fund. Our theaters need you right now, so
it's great. The one thing I want to say before we hang up is it's great that we are truly a part of a community. I know probably in some places theaters compete with each other. I never look at it that way. We truly are a family, and I'm so thankful, not just for Patrick and Raleigh Little Theater, but definitely, Theater in the Park, Burning Coal, all of us, and I hate to leave anybody out, all of us have really been in touch with each other and continue to do so, because we're not going to go down in flames. We will get through this all together.
Well, thank you both. That is a great way to end the conversation. I'm going to invite you all to come back and join me at 7 o'clock tonight, right here on Facebook Live. I'll be with my friend Martha, who is a member of the Dramatists Guild, and she's also a wonderful freelance writer. And we're going to be talking about what's happening in New York, what's happening with the writing community, what's happening with the Dramatists Guild Awards. I know they're going to still keep going on. And she's also the president of the American Theater Critics Association, which I'm proud to be a member of. So come back and join me at 7 o'clock tonight. And I have trouble remembering all the days. I'm looking at my calendar like, what time is this one? But anyway, thank you guys again, and happy Easter. Have a good holiday weekend.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.